reach out to senior organizations, to the trade unions, the disability groups, the women's groups, to veterans groups. The so-called change CBI would cut benefits for disabled vets. We rallied the American people. And you know what happened? You don't hear anybody talking about cutting Social Security anymore because we educated and organized the American people, and that is what we've got to do on issue after issue after issue. Now here is my great fear. There are a lot of issues, and until Gene gives me the hook or starts coughing and tells me I have to shut up, I'm going to go over it. But here's the profound issue. Not too many people talk about it. Let me be straight with you again. In America today, if we do not get our act together, we don't rally the American people. What Gene said, quoting what I said, is exactly right. In the coming elections, what the experts tell us is that 60% of the American people are not going to be voting this November. And you can extrapolate from that and know that low-income people who vote less often, 70 or 80% of them, people of color, and young people, 70, 80% will not vote. That's one reality. And our Republican colleagues are working overtime through voter suppression to make it harder for people to vote. You know why? Because they are cowards and do not want a fair fight. I have run in many elections. And sometimes I've lost, and sometimes I've won. But my view has always been that in a democracy, if I can't defend my ideas and take it to the people, then I deserve to lose. I will never go do what they do, trying to make it harder for people to vote. Our job is to make it easier for people to vote. And it is only a coward who does not believe in his or her ideas that tries to engage in voter suppression, coming up with these IDs and everything else. Because they can't stand behind their ideas. So on one hand, they have billionaires funding their elections, and on the other hand, they're working overtime through gerrymandering and through voter suppression to keep people from fully participating. Now, what is the major issue out there? A lot of issues that are out there. We all know them. Here is the major issue. And that is, if we don't get our act together, and we don't mobilize working families, and lower-income people, and young people, we stand a very real danger of seeing this extraordinarily great country, a country which for so many years has been the envy of the world. We stand the chance of seeing this country move from a democratic form of society with a strong middle class to an oligarchic form of society owned and controlled by a handful of billionaires, and that we must not allow to happen. That is the issue.
That's right. That's right.
If you ask me to sum up what's going on economically in the country, I can tell you very briefly. The great middle class of this country, and I got to tell you, my father came to this country without a nickel in his pocket. He worked his whole life. He never made a whole lot of money. Never quite made it to the middle class. But he was able to send 2 of his kids to college. That was pretty good. Pretty good. But right now what you're seeing is that great middle class, once the envy of the entire world, disappearing. Disappearing. Today you have millions of people, people in Vermont, people in Iowa, people in all over this country, who are now working longer hours for lower wages, despite huge increases in productivity. Just think about it. You got all of the computer technology, you got robotics, you got all the iPads and the iPhones. With all of that technology, workers are producing more, but they are receiving less. Why is that? Well, 2 important facts to know. In terms of distribution of income, where is the money going? Since the Wall Street crash, 95% of all new income has gone to the top 1%. 95% of all new income goes to the top 1%. So you got millions of people. You got people who are 50, 60 years of age, worked their whole lives, they've lost their jobs, job has gone to China, job has gone to Vietnam, the new job they have pays half the wages that the old job without the benefits. You're seeing kids leaving high school, where once there was a time for them to get a manufacturing job in Vermont or in your state. You know where they're working now? They're working in Walmart for low wages, minimum benefits. In the last 15 years, we have lost in this country some 60,000 factories. And young people don't even know that there was once a time in America where the products they buy wasn't made in China, it was once made in America. So we've seen a decline, significant decline in those manufacturing jobs. Now, no one is going to say that working in a manufacturing plant, a factory, is the greatest job in the world. But you know what? People who worked in factories were able to make middle-class wages. If you had a union, you had decent benefits, you had a pension program. You kids could do better than you. But as a result of disastrous trade policies, we have lost thousands of these millions of these decent paying jobs, and it is harder and harder to find products manufactured in the United States of America. And you know what I say? Turn on the TV tonight, and every company in the world tells you that they want you to buy their products. General Electric, everybody wants you to buy their products. Well, if they want us to buy their products, maybe it's high time for them to start manufacturing those products back here in the United States of America. But it's not only income. And you can summarize what's happened in the economy in the United States in one sentence. Not so many years ago, the largest private sector employer in America was General Motors. Today, that largest private sector employer is Walmart. In one sentence, that is the transition of the American economy. Low wages, anti-union, no benefits. And while we're on the subject of Walmart, may I say this? When you look at distribution of wealth in America, I talked about income, 95% of all new income goes to the top 1%. In terms of wealth today, the top 1% owns 38% of the financial wealth of America. And that's a pretty startling fact. You want to hear something even more startling? The bottom 60% of Americans own what percentage of the wealth? What's the guess?
2%.
2.3%.
Oh my God.
All right? Top 1% owns 38% of the financial wealth. The bottom 60% owns 2.3% of the financial wealth. One family, the Walton family, see, the Koch brothers are only the second wealthiest family in America. The wealthiest family is the Walton family. They're worth roughly, give or take a few billion, $140 billion. One family owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. One family. Last year, 25 hedge fund managers made $24 billion. That sum of money, $24 billion, is equivalent to the salaries made by 425,000 public school teachers. Got that? And then people say, well, we just don't have the money for public education.
Wonder why.
So in one sentence, what is happening, well, it's a long sentence. In one very long sentence, some commas, no periods. What is happening to the economy of the United States? Middle class disappearing, people working longer hours for low wages. Real unemployment in America, it's not what you see on television, it's not 6.3%. It is closer to 12% if you include people who have given up looking for work and people who work in part-time. Most of the new jobs being created are part-time, low-wage jobs. If you're working 20 hours a week and you want to work 40, you are employed. If you include those figures, real unemployment close to 12%, youth unemployment close to 20%, African-American youth unemployment close to 40%. Middle class disappearing. More people living in poverty than any time in the history of this country, and yet the people on top and the large corporations have never had it so good. That is what is going on in the economy right now. Last year, typical male workers made $283 less than they did 44 years ago. You see guys on television, they're furious. They don't know why they're furious. That's why they're furious. They're making less today in inflation-accounted dollars than they did 44 years ago. Typical female workers earned $1,700 less last year than they did in 2007. And if you want to know, it's funny, I flew in from Burlington today, we had Burlington Airport, the airport in Moline, and you see the faces of many of the people working in the airport. People are stressed out, and they're often exhausted. People are stressed out and exhausted, and they're worried. Listen to this. Today, half of all Americans have less than $10,000 in their savings account. You know what that is? That means that you're 60 years of age, you don't have a good insurance program, you get sick, you're finished financially. You're a worker and your car breaks down and you need a new car, and you don't have the money to do that. You're a mom trying to send your kids to childcare, and you can't do that. Half of the people in this country have less than $10,000 in the bank. And that tells you where we are as a nation, how stressful the situation is. Let me say a few words about where I think we have got to go. What should be the progressive agenda? Every poll that I have ever seen, when they ask the American people, what should we do? What's always there at the top of the list? What's the one word that's always there? Jobs. Everybody knows that. Because real unemployment is quite high. What we need to do is create millions of decent paying jobs through a massive jobs program by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our sources. If I was driving here, Mayor Ruger mentioned the problems that Davenport has, that Burlington, Vermont has in terms of sewers, in terms of streets. We can put, the economists tell us, fastest way to put people back to work is to rebuild this crumbling infrastructure. And you know how else we can create jobs? Let me tell you something. I don't know how people here in Iowa feel about it. But the scientists are very, very clear. And when I talk about major issues, let me put this one right up on the table. The scientists have told us, and I'm on the Environmental Committee and the Energy. What they have said is, A, climate change is real. Climate change is significantly caused by human activity. Climate change today, in terms of drought and forest fires and flood and rising sea levels and extreme weather disturbances. That climate change today is already causing devastating problems in this country and all over the world. And if we do not get our act together and significantly cut greenhouse gas emissions and transform our energy system away from fossil fuel and into energy efficiency and sustainable energy, the situation will become much, much worse. And here is the good news. That's the bad news. And what is really embarrassing, and I want to say this very seriously, you know, we all have Republican friends, and we disagree with Republicans, and that's fine. It's called American democracy. But there is something that I find hard to believe and embarrassing. Republicans do not argue about the science of cancer research. They want cancer research to go forward